I seem to be surrounded by an abundance of cubes today. Yeah, you ever have days like that where you just wake up and you're surrounded by cubes? Yeah, it happens to the best of us, really. I don't even know what's up with it. Barry's not a cube. His mother was a cube, though, and his father was actually a cylinder, believe it or not. I know, it doesn't say, like, they're from different worlds, but it worked. Okay, so, this is a theory about poneglyphs, right? But it's more than that, alright? It's something regarding the Will of D, the Ancient Kingdom, the Void Century, the world government, and poneglyphs all wrapped up in a nice little package. Now, this is one of those things where I'm like, I just realized this today. You might have realized this a long time ago. In fact, this might be like so obvious that nobody even bothers to talk about it because it's like so apparent, but I just noticed it today. So it might be one of the, I might be striking gold here, or I might just be digging in the, the dirt in my backyard trying to find gold and just like, it's down here somewhere. Just gotta keep going. But I just want to bring it up because I think it's an interesting little connection to all of these things. Doesn't really solve any mysteries. It's like I didn't like crack the code here. Like, guys, I figured out what the Will of D means. It stands for cube. That's the one thing nobody would have expected, right? No. But it's an interesting little, just, it ties them all together in a nice little present. Okay, so how to begin this theory, how to talk about this. All right, so every time we get introduced, every time we find a new poneglyph in the story, whether it be a Rio poneglyph, a road poneglyph, or just an ordinary run-of-the-mill poneglyph that just talks about history or whatever, we, the fans, are always curious about what's written on the damn thing, right? Like, that's the big question. Like, when Robin found the poneglyph in Skypiea, and she's like, oh, it shows the location, or it tells the location of Poseidon, and we're like, oh, well, where is it? The one in Alabasta, the one in the Royal Tomb was like, this is where Pluton is, and like, okay, well, where is it? The road poneglyphs, of course, all specify various locations and stuff. There was that one cover story where Jinbei finds an old poneglyph, not a Rio poneglyph, I guess it could have been a Rio poneglyph, but he finds like a poneglyph under the water and on the ocean floor, and he delivers it to Big Mom. He's like, what was written on that thing? Okay, we got the 4 road poneglyphs, the 9 Rio, and then a bunch of other ones that I think are just like historical, right? So instead of focusing though what's written on them for a second, back up and start paying attention to where they are located in the story, where we see these things popping up, all right? There was one in Alabasta. I mean, there were technically more than one in Alabasta, but don't talk about the anime filler, okay? Just to keep this simple, let's just keep going, all right? There was one in the Royal Tomb in Alabasta, all right? Then we had one on Sky Island in Upper Yard, but it wasn't originally on Upper Yard, was it? No, it was blasted into the sky by the knock-up stream 400 years ago. It was originally on Jaya, which was where the kingdom of Shandora was, El Dorado, the Golden City, okay? So we had Shandora, Alabasta, there was one in O'Hara. That was the one that located and gave the name of the Great Kingdom that the O'Harans were studying, like Clover and everybody. Although, I guess it's also possible they could have found that one, because the whole thing with O'Harans is they're archaeologists, so they might have found that and brought it back, or it might have been there to begin with. Considering the land of O'Hara is pretty damn old, the Tree of Knowledge is like 5,000 years old or some shit, I wouldn't be surprised if that one was there for a while. So for right now, let's just say, yeah, that one was always at O'Hara. There's the road poneglyph located at Zo, and then there's another road poneglyph located at Wano, which Kaido currently has. I mean, that wasn't confirmed exactly that the one that Kaido has in his possession was at Wano, but considering there's that whole connection between the Minks and the Kozuki clan, something that we just, what got reaffirmed in the last chapter, we heard the backstory of that a little bit, and considering the Kozuki clan were the ones that actually created the poneglyphs to begin with, it stands to reason that they would keep a road poneglyph in their land of Wano, and the Minks would keep a road poneglyph on Zunisha, on their land of Zo. Kaido and Orochi take over Wano. Kaido finds the poneglyph. Orochi would locate it, and Kaido now has it. It's at Onigashima. The road poneglyph Big Mom has in her possession, we have no idea where that was originally located, okay? So those are the ones we know about, all right? And then the one on Fishman Island. Okay, that's another important location, all right? 900 years ago, world government tries to take over the world. They do succeed, but the particulars of this we do not know. That is why it's called the Void Century. We know that the Great Kingdom ruled the world before the world government took over. Kind of honestly seems like a parallel to the Roman Empire to me, where the Roman Empire owned a big chunk of the known world at the time, at their height, and then slowly throughout the centuries, they break apart, they get weaker, and now the Great Roman Empire is no more. Alright, so I like to think of it like that. Like, the Great Kingdom did have this huge empire spanning the world as best as it could back during that time period. Then the world government swept in, started taking over. It would make sense that the world government back then would have some sort of opposition, some sort of rebellion rebellion. It might even be more than one rebellion faction trying to be like, okay, we don't want the world government taking over, we want the Great Kingdom to stay in power. Or there could have been other factions that are like, hey, we don't want the Great Kingdom or the world government in power. You know, while all this chaos is going on, let's try to do our own thing. And wherever you want to put the will of D, that the clan of D, if you want to call them that, that's your opinion at the moment. That could be one of anything. You know, it could have the will of D could have started with the ancient kingdom, with their hopes and trying to retain their kingdom without it getting overthrown by the world government, or the D clan could have been part of some other organization or group that were trying to take over or just trying to prevent the world government from power. Whatever. That's not really important here. What is important is that the Poneglyphs were created at that time in order to maintain the history of the world that they were pretty damn sure the world government was going to erase. It's like they knew. It's like they knew that once the world government's going to win, it's like at the tipping point of this war, and it's looking like, okay, the world government's definitely going to take over. There's nothing we can do to stop them at this point. We know how they are. Once they do take over, they are going to, you know, history is decided by the victors, or history is written by the victors, so to speak. So it's like they're going to eliminate every piece of history from before their rule. They're going to just control the world and history and propaganda and all that stuff. It's like they were expecting that. So that's why the Poneglyphs came into existence, okay? Kozuki clan takes some kind of special material, some unbreakable, unchippable material, might be sea stone or something else really hardcore that can only be found in Wano. Kozuki clan, these ancient stonemasons, begin to etch these Poneglyphs. Now, keeping all the Poneglyphs in one location, like if the Kozuki clan created all of them on Wano, keeping them all on Wano, all 30 of them, that might be a little bit too dangerous, because then if Wano is destroyed or burned down, or you know, if they get invaded, then all of them disappear at once, okay? So it also makes sense, hey, we're going to take these Poneglyphs and we're going to scatter them into the world. Where are they going to put them, though? They're going to give them to people that are allies in this cause. All groups that oppose the world government, kind of like, hey, we might not succeed right now in preventing the world government from taking over. They kind of already won. But what we can do is that we can write down our history. We can write down the location of these ancient weapons that are definitely going to become useful in taking on the world government someday. We can write down the true history that they are definitely going to try to, erase from the world. We're going to etch it all down in the road Poneglyphs to the location of Laugh-Tale, this place that had huge significance even before Roger arrived there, whatever the One Piece is. Might be some kind of doomsday weapon. I did a whole video on that talking about how, you know, the Straw Hats arrive at Laugh-Tale. There could be some kind of button, and you press the button, and when you press it, like, the red line is destroyed, right? Which might sound like a good thing, you know, because it, you know, destroys Marijois and the Tenryubito and everything, and the world government is taken out of power, but also a bad thing because it could, like, literally destroy the world. So that's the rub. That's kind of like the choice the Straw Hats might have to make. That's the choice Roger might have had to, you know, decide upon, like, when they arrived at Laugh-Tale, like, oh man, do I push the button? I push the button, it ends the world government's reign, but it could very well destroy the entire world as we know it, so Roger decided not to do it. Luffy, personally, before the explanation is even made, would just be, he'd be like, what, guys, huh? What am I not supposed to do? You know, so that's just my theory, right? But the road Poneglyphs existed long before Roger's. That's just important to mention there. Laugh-Tale was significant well before Roger's day. Okay, so they gave these Poneglyphs to various locations. Think about this for a second. They gave one to the Nefeltari family at Alabasta. The one family that decided, we don't want a part of Marijois. We don't want to be Tenryubito. We kind of want to go back to our home island. Which indicates, and the Gorosei don't like Cobra very much. And it seemed like the Gorosei, the way they were talking about it, they viewed the Nefeltari family as, like, basically traitors for hundreds of years. There's definitely some bad blood there. They have to let the Nefeltari family come to Reverie because, you know, they're still royalty and all that stuff. But it really seems like the Gorosei and Im, have some weird relationship with it. Well, Im seems to, like, be infatuated with Vivi. I mean, all we get from that is Im was looking at, Vivi's picture and was just kind of staring at it. We didn't really get his facial expression or their facial expression. We have no idea what Im is, but, you know, it seemed like he's, like, interested in Vivi in some way, and then Vivi has been kidnapped, so to speak. You know, we don't know the whole circumstances behind that, but it seems like she was kidnapped by the world government, the CPI Jazero or somebody, and brought him to the Pangaea Castle. That's what I'm assuming right now, okay? So, yeah, it seemed like, okay, the one family that defected from the world government and decided to not defected, but defected from the Tenryubito, certainly, didn't want to be there to rule over the world, they get a Poneglyph. they seem like if there was going to be any family out of the 20 that originally started the world government, there was going to be any family that would be an ally to the people, an ally to the D-Clan, it would be the Nefeltari family. So they got a Poneglyph. There's another Poneglyph located at Fishman Island. The Fishmen have been subjugated and enslaved by the Tenryubito for literally centuries. Now, in recent years, this has begun to change when Jinbei became a warlord and the efforts of Otohime. But understand that for a very, very long time before that, the Fishmen were not allied with the world government at all. The Fishmen and Merfolk and Fishman Island, they were kind of separate, right? And they were enslaved for literally centuries. So they would definitely oppose the world government. It's like, in recent years, it's a tenuous connection, and even now, it's not that great, because look at what happened with Reverie. Freaking Charlos just barging in and like, hey, I want to share a Hoshi Mermaid, yeah! And, you know, like, the one that stopped him was Mulesguard, who's also like an unusual Tenryubito after being influenced by Otohime. But if it wasn't for Mulesguard, like, what would they have done? They wouldn't have done anything. Here's what would have happened if Mulesguard wasn't there. Neptune would have went on a rampage, probably like Fukaboshi and Manboshi and Ryoboshi. They all would have went on a rampage, fought their way through, trying to get their sister back, or in Neptune's case, his daughter. And they were like, if they got her back, great, but it doesn't matter, because at that point, it'd be like, all right, you're going against the will of a Tenryubito. You're no longer allied with the world government, right? And Neptune was ready to make that. Neptune was just like, I'm sorry, Otohime. I'm sorry, my beloved wife. I can't do it. I tried to continue your dream. I tried to make peace with these damn Tenryubito and try to make peace in the world where fishmen and merfolk could live in harmony and all that stuff. But, you know, look at what they're doing to our daughter. You know, I can't do it. So Neptune was ready to throw it all away. But then luckily Mulesguard showed up and saved the day there. Okay, so it would make sense why they would get a Poneglyph. And keep in mind, the Poneglyph at Fishman Island's a little bit different from the other Poneglyphs. It's not a road Poneglyph, nor is it a Poneglyph that really... It does discuss an ancient weapon, but not in the way that you think. It's more of an apology letter that Joy Boy was giving to the mermaid princess back during the Void Century, the Poseidon back then. So it does mention Poseidon, but in a different context, okay? But it would make sense that they would have one, because they're, like, definitely enemies of the world government, all right? Plus, they're far removed. You know, they're in this location way down below the sea at 10,000 meters down, not easily accessible, okay? Especially since back then, like 900 years ago, it's probably even more dangerous to get to Fishman Island than it is right now, right? And even right now, it's pretty damn dangerous to get all the way down there. Then you have Shandora. Shandora, El Dorado, was this golden city. Whether or not it was connected to the Great Kingdom, I don't personally think it was, but it would have definitely been a really strong kingdom that would have opposed the world government's rule. When Robin was in the sky reading all the different, like, historical, like, notes and everything, she said, like, the city of Shandora began to prosper around 1100 years ago. And then around 800 years ago, right after the Void Century, that was when it collapsed and it fell. The scripts up in Sky Island and Upper Yard weren't very specific on what happened, but it was apparent that, like, yeah, this shining golden city was like the hub of commerce, and it had a huge economy back then, and then it just kind of, it didn't disappear, it just kind of collapsed. By the time Noland ran into Colver 400 years ago, those would have been 400 years after the fall of this city, it was not looking too good. There were still Shandorians living there, but it certainly wasn't at the heights that it was. So I believe at that point what happened was the world government went on this massive campaign. After they crushed the Great Kingdom, they went on this campaign of destruction, like wiping out all these other really strong civilizations there that could oppose them. Shandora being one of those civilizations. They barged in, they probably captured a bunch of Shandorans for slaves, they wiped out a bunch of them. There were a few that still lived, the stragglers, that was like Colgara's little tribe. But yeah, beyond that, no. And they ransacked the city, and the only problem with that is, like, if they ransacked a city, you know, it's a city of gold, so why didn't they take all the gold? But you could come up with any reason for that. Maybe it's like the world government, after creating the Great Kingdom, after taking over the Great Kingdom, the world government had more money than they could ever need. So it's like, we don't need, like, the city of gold is impressive, like, no joke, it's a city made of gold, but maybe all of the treasure that the Great Kingdom had, if the Great Kingdom ruled over the entire planet, you know, if it really was like the One Piece version of the Roman Empire, like, if you just go back to the time of the Roman Empire, empire at its height, and you had access to literally every single bit of treasure and value of everything that it had in its possession, a city of gold would have been cool, but that would be kind of like the icing on the cake at that point, right? So I'm thinking like, okay, that could be a reason, or it could be like the Shandora, like it's hard to get to Jaya, so it's just like, you know what, we wiped them out, we took most of their people away from them, we burned their city, or we devastated their city enough, you know, they're in no position to oppose us, so screw it. And it was one of those things that was just lost in the annals of history until Noland eventually arrived, and then he discovered it again, and then he left, and then it got blasted into the sky, so it was even more forgotten at that point. It was more of just a legend at that point. So, yeah. But the Shandorians, they had in their possession a poneglyph, and a very important poneglyph, because it was one that revealed the location of Poseidon, okay? Then you have the one that was located at Wano. Like I said, not guaranteed, but I'm guessing, yeah, Kozuki clan, they made 30 poneglyphs. They kept one on their island, Wano. Kaido takes over. He finds it because Orochi rolls over, and he's like, oh yeah, the poneglyph, it's here, located in the palace. And Kaido's like, all right, thanks. And he takes it, and he puts it in Onigashima, where it's located right now, somewhere in the dungeons of Kaido's mansion, probably. Then Big Mom's, we don't know where Big Mom got hers, but it was probably in some other island, or maybe in some ruins or something that connected back to the Void Century. Not every single poneglyph in the world is probably in a populated island. There are probably some of them that were allies with the D clan and the Kozukis and the Minks, and then, yeah, the road poneglyph located in Zunisha, I've already discussed that. But, you know, they could have been like, hey, the Gingle Dip Kingdom, you get a poneglyph, take care of it. And the Gingle Dip Kingdom king is like, yes, thank you, we will guard this with our lives. But that was, you know, 800 something years ago. So the Gingle Dip Kingdom got destroyed at some point. They were destroyed by the world government at some point, or, you know, their poneglyph might still be there in the ruins or something. Like, time kind of wears down on everything. There are 30 poneglyphs that exist in total, 9 of which are Rio, 4 of which are Road. The Rio and Roads are the only ones that we really care about. I guess the other ones that really... well, here's the thing. According to this chart, there really isn't a distinction in appearance between the Rio poneglyphs and the regular poneglyphs. The Road poneglyphs are colored red, so we could have very likely have seen Rio poneglyphs up until this point, but they're all blue, or that purplish color in the anime, so we wouldn't really know the difference there. So, I don't know if you want to say, like, the ones that specify the location of ancient weapons, those seem to be, like, really important ones. Those might be Rio poneglyphs. Like, the one we saw in Skypiea might have been a Rio poneglyph talking about this ancient weapon. Because, yeah, I guess not, because Robin said that's not what I was looking for. Robin's looking for the history, the true history of the Void Century. I'm just thinking, like, the ancient weapons and the history, the true history, those kind of go hand in hand. In my opinion, they kind of do. You know? So maybe the Rio poneglyphs are divided even further, where there's like 3 of the 9 Rio poneglyphs that only talk about these ancient weapons, and the other 6 talk about the ancient history. Maybe something like that. Or maybe it's like 9 Rio poneglyphs that talk about nothing but the history of the Void Century, 4 Road poneglyphs, and then the other, they'd be, 30 minus 13, come on, Matt, you can do this, come on, 20, wait, no, 17, okay, good, 17 other poneglyphs, and in those 17, talk about, the ancient weapons, or just random histories from other lands, okay, something like that, okay. So, yeah, that was the thing I realized. It's just like the locations of all of these definitely indicate that they were allies of the Will of D, or at the very least, enemies of the world government. Right? Now, Ohara also, because Ohara is the land of scholars, it would definitely make sense why the Kozukis would present them with ones. It's like, this is literally the island that is in charge of keeping our knowledge safeguarded for all time, and they lasted a pretty damn long time. They lasted a good chunk of it. It was only 20-something years ago that it finally got destroyed by the world government, right? So, yeah, it made sense they would definitely get one that they would research. Now, 800 years is a long-ass time, guys. So over the years, people, you know, the knowledge of reading the poneglyphs kind of died out to only a select few that were able to, you know, actually read the poneglyphs, right? Either through, like, you know, being a scholar like Robin or Olvia or, you know, Clover, or having that ability to hear the voices of all things, or being able to understand the message of all things. Like, I don't think Roger, you know, Roger with his ability, I don't think he went up to a poneglyph and looked at it and, like, it, like, translated for him in his mind. I think Roger's ability to hear the voices of all things was like maybe like the mastered observation hockey or maybe something like that, or he had the potential for that because Luffy can kind of do it now, but not very well. Maybe it was a thing where Roger, when seeing the Poneglyphs, he could like understand the message that it was trying to convey. So he's not like reading it verbatim, but he can like look at it and he's like, I can understand that the people that wrote this wanted to hide an ancient weapon that's located at this place. Something like that. Like he can kind of understand the meaning behind it rather than understanding it word verbatim. So, what does this mean? Like I said, I don't have any answers here, but start thinking about locations in the world that the world government is doesn't have complete control over, or places that don't like the world government very much. And you could very well probably find a poneglyph in those locations. Elbaf was the first place I thought of. The land of giants that kind of has their own thing going on there. They did try to broker that marriage between Big Mom's family and, the giants, but I think that might have been more because Loki was just, like, maybe Loki was just smitten with Lola. And Loki was like, Dad, Odin, I need to marry her. Odin was not Loki's dad in Norse myth, but, like, they might go along with that because it's, whatever. Anyway, so it's like Loki really wanted to get married to Lola and stuff. So other than that, though, maybe for the most part, they kind of stay on their own. They don't, like, it's not like they have like an isolated policy like Wano, because that's clearly not the case, because there's giants kind of all over the world. But it's more of just like we govern ourselves here. We, the giants of Elbaf have our own thing. We don't get involved with other lands in that way in politics, and we don't get involved with the world government or anything. We have the power to kind of like maintain our own government and our own, our own means of doing that, right? Because we're the giants, right? Now, yeah, one giant on his own is not strong enough to overthrow the world government, but you figure an entire nation filled with like, thousands, maybe even millions of giants. We don't know how many people live in Elbaf. We don't know how Elbaf has to be. We only saw a tiny piece of Elbaf. So it could have been a really huge island divided into different areas, like the different like lands of Norse mythology, and then the world tree in the center. So it could be all that, right? It could be all that in a bag of potato chips, a really large jumbo family-sized bag of potato chips, okay? So I'm definitely going to say that there's a poneglyph located on Elbaf. Where else? I threw out the idea of Baltigo, just because Baltigo was the place where the Revolutionary Army, the literal overt enemies of the world government, the ones that, come out and directly say, we are enemies of the world government, we are enemies of the Tenryubito, we are the Revolutionary Army. Baltigo would have one. Now, I don't know if Baltigo has some significance 800 years ago, or if that was just an island that Dragon just picked. Dragon was like, we need a home base for our organization. Hey, there's this island, this windy land of Baltigo. It's kind of mysterious. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. No one will ever find it here. Let's just set up our base here. It didn't really have any historical significance other than the fact it was really hard to get to. And then the reason that it was found out and discovered was kind of by accident. Burgess ended up stowing away and finding it, and then he's like, follow my Viva card and you'll find Baltigo. But other than that, it seems like the world government would have been looking for that place for years and they couldn't find it, right? So, yeah, maybe, that was the original homeland of the clan of D. So if that's the case, there would have been a poneglyph there. A dragon having one in his possession makes perfect sense. So I was like, yeah, you could totally see Dragon and the Revolutionary Army having a poneglyph. Now, the things are pretty damn heavy. They're really heavy and they're indestructible and stuff. But with the means that the Revolutionary Army have at their disposal, when they start like, oh crap, Blackbeard's attacking Baltigo. We need to get out of Dodge. We need to get the hell out of here. Dragon's a smart enough guy to think like, hey, we have to take this with us. It's like we can't just leave it here. So Dragon might have had like something, planned for years before that. Like, all right, in case, the world government or any other person discovers Baltigo's location, we need to get out of here quick. They might have already had this, like the poneglyph loaded up on a ship, like a huge like galleon or something, ready to go, ready to transport it. All right, that might have been all right, ready to go. Just like, okay, get on the ship, load the poneglyph. They pull a lever and just slides down into the cargo hold of a ship and just like, all right, let's go, because they can't just leave that there, right? Or they could have used somebody's devil fruit in order to, transport it. I'm trying to think of that. Yeah, Karasu makes a bunch of crows to carry it. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Morley can control earth like clay, and he can mold it into whatever shape he wants. We don't know what material these are made out of, right? But and especially if it's Sea Prism Stone, it wouldn't work because he's a Devil Fruit user. I feel like it is Sea Prism, because if that was the case, you know, if they weren't made out of Sea Prism, if they were made out of just like a really hard material that wasn't Sea Prism, then Devil Fruit users would be able to destroy them. So, yeah, that can't be the case there. But Dragon would have been smart enough to know some way to get the Poneglyph off the island if it was there, and now it's at Kamabaka, you know, where the current revolutionary base is, right? Which personally I feel like is a better home base for it anyway. Baltigo seemed like a desolate wasteland, really windy, really cold. Kamabaka is great. Kamabaka is nice. It probably smells very flowery and just really nice there, and the grass is nice, and everything's pink, you know, just like it's a lot more colorful than Baltigo, right? So it's just like, this is more peaceful. You got nice flowers and everything, you know? So, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So let me know, you know, going along with that logic, what other islands and locations might hold a Road Poneglyph or Rio or, you know, just any Poneglyph, really. So, yeah, like, once again, I don't know if this might have been something like, no duh, Matt, no crap, no shit, that this was, like, the case all the time. We figured this out years ago. But I just noticed it now. So, yeah. Might have been a completely useless video for you to watch, in which case, I'll dance for you. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If not, I hope this makes up for it. Probably not very well, because I dance horribly, you know, but whatever. Actually, I got a fun story to tell you as I end it out. Alright, so yesterday I'm going for a walk in my town. It's a tiny little village. You know, there's really not much to it, honestly. I'm up at this ball field, big empty ball field. I go up there and just kind of, I'm alone. I'm by myself. I'm just like alone with my thoughts. It's a really nice place, okay? This was like 9 o'clock in the morning. It was cold. It was like a little bit of snow on the ground. I was like, there's nobody up there. I'm listening to music, right? So I'm up at this ball field and I'm listening to music and I just start dancing because there's nobody around. It's an empty field out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna dance. I was dancing to Word Up by Korn, which I have problems. But anyway, I'm dancing next to this ball field and I look across the ball field and there's two people working on like a fence, like they're fixing a fence on the other side of the ball field, and they're way on the other side, so I can't see them, but they're just like, I can tell they're staring right at me, and I'm just like, okay, and I just kind of waved at them, and I walked away. So if the dancing wasn't worth it, I hope the story was worth it. Alright, you guys have a good day. Beware the cubes.